What deism exactly means is quite blurry, as there are various nuances, but the basic idea behind it is that there is some kind of creator, but that after he created everything, he basically sat back and let everyone get on with it. The most commonly used illustration to explain deism is that it's like winding up a clock and then letting it run down by itself. We don't interfere with the clock after it's been wound. The natural mechanisms built into the clock see to it that the hands keep moving around the face as they should. The deist God, therefore, is one that doesn't interact with human affairs as such, but can be determined using reason and observation of the natural world alone, the natural mechanisms of it, if you like. Because he doesn't interact with human affairs, deists believe God had given no direct revelations to any human being. Therefore, all holy books are mere human interpretations of a universal truth. They all contain some strands of wisdom and are of some interest, but none could be considered to be the absolute truth, direct from the mouth of God. None could lay claim to being a perfect and direct revelation. Deists believe that all gods of the world were basically the same one by different names, and that one person couldn't say that his god was any higher than another. This idea that people should abandon ideas of absolute truths largely came about because people had become fed up of religious wars. Instead of everyone fighting about who was the right God, the peaceful solution was to say that everyone was right, everyone had a piece of the truth, and therefore God became less well defined and more subjective. He could be whatever you wanted him to be, and you could call him whatever you wanted to call him. Many deists tended to settle on general and impersonal names, such as Providence. This generalized God was involved in all the seemingly diverse religions and observable in nature, but you couldn't know him personally. Deism was a forerunner to pantheism, not just that God is observable in nature, but that God is nature. God is the trees, the stones, the birds, the rivers. Some deists believe that God interacted with people through creation, and pantheists went one step further and said that God is creation. In pantheism, however, God tellingly normally becomes female and is referred to as Mother Nature or Mother Earth. Use of that term can slip out quite easily, but we should try to eliminate it from our speech. There is no Mother Earth or nature or anything. There is a Father God. Sometimes people personalize Mother Nature and call her Gaia, and that's just the goddess again. Deism was also the forerunner to universalism, the idea that everyone will get to heaven through belief in their own gods. Because they thought that all the different names people had for God were referring to the same one, it didn't really matter which one you believed in. Deists, in keeping with the increasing bent towards science, began thinking of God in scientific terms. They began referring to him by the umbrella term, the Grand Architect of the universe. The Grand Architect was thought to have a plan for that universe, but deists believe it would come about through the natural actions of men. Like the wound-up clock, the world is ticking towards its inevitable and natural conclusion. Men would fulfill this plan as they acquired knowledge and evolved towards enlightenment. What people were effectively doing was minimizing God. They couldn't do without him altogether, but they didn't like this idea that he was involved in everyday life. Deism was the middle ground that people required prior to Darwin's theory of evolution. When we get our heads round all this, we understand there was a diabolical genius about the Enlightenment as a counterpunch to the Reformation. A situation had developed where people were intent on rejecting the true God because of the excesses of Catholicism, which had nothing to do with God at all, while simultaneously promoting the amalgamation of all Satan's diverse mystery religions and gods under one heading, in deism. Now it was these so-called enlightened deists, searching for alternative truths about spirituality that would take them away from the Christian God, who began to join Freemason lodges. Freemasonry's history is shrouded in secrecy, but up until a certain point at least, it seemed to have the appearance of being a relatively innocuous organization. But from this point onwards, it became a kind of church of deism, and in time, the purest form of the Babylonian mysteries in existence.